think the administration feels very optimistic. Obviously, you've seen, Steve, that the president's entire team, including Special Envoy Witkoff and Secretary Rubio and the vice president and the president himself, Secretary Hegseth as well, have been working so hard on this effort, and they all really want to see this war come to an end. They had very good talks with the Ukrainians in Florida, and now, of course, Special Envoy Witkoff is on his way to Russia. This is sort of the shuttle diplomacy that you've seen from this administration play out, where we speak equally with both sides. We've put points on paper. Those points have been very much refined, but we do feel quite good, and we're hopeful that this war can finally come to an end.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt discussing the ongoing peace talks to secure an end to the Russian-Ukraine war. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner are in Moscow right now. They're set to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin today to iron out details on President Trump's 19-point peace plan. Russia and Ukraine trading drone strikes this weekend. Ukraine hitting a Russian oil tanker on Saturday in the Black Sea using Navy drones. Moscow carrying out strikes in Ukrainian territory, reportedly killing at least 4 people and injuring many others. I want to bring in Heritage Senior Research Fellow and former Deputy National Security Advisor for Vice President Dick Cheney, Steve Yates. Steve, good morning. I think the biggest takeaway from today is going to be what will Vladimir Putin, agree to. And you say you don't see any evidence so far that he's moving in this direction. So why are these talks happening then?
Well, it's the constant gardening of real diplomacy. I mean, there were 3 years of unrestricted warfare in which there were no negotiations whatsoever. And I thought that was exceedingly irresponsible, and there was a heavy price paid by many in all of that. And the Trump administration, in under a year, has done an enormous amount of work to reorient allies in a somewhat less dependent relationship with Russia and to do more to rally their resources. A lot of what Secretary Rubio was doing to paint out that path to prosperity for Ukraine post-conflict involves European neighbors stepping in important ways. And it gives Ukraine some hope that there is a path post-conflict. The key, though, for me is, has Vladimir Putin made the strategic choice? They are the ones that invaded. They are the ones that have not stopped hitting their neighbor. And that's where I think the hardest part of all of this is. But I think the administration is doing all the right things, the right strategy, the right work. You just don't control what the aggressive adversary was really ready, willing, and able to do.
And it still comes down to, it seems to be, land and also security guarantees for Ukraine. And we've heard a lot of talk from our European allies. We'll see if they're more willing to step up and give us just more than words about what they're going to do for Ukraine. I want to move over to Taiwan and China with you. Taiwan has been shoring up defense systems in the face of these increasing threats coming from China. Taiwan's defense ministry is working with the U.S. Embassy to buy Northrop Grumman's integrated battle command system for its T-Dome air defense system. China scrambling for allies to support its desire to take over Taiwan. France's Emmanuel Macron is expected to travel to Beijing and meet with Xi Jinping this week. We heard statements coming from the Élysée Palace in France, basically, giving a thumbs up to Xi Jinping, for lack of a better term here, saying that they believe that Beijing controls Taiwan. Listen to what Gordon Chang told me yesterday about where he thinks China and Xi Jinping stand right now.
Beijing has gone on a bender. So every conversation it has with every country is going to focus on Japan and Taiwan, as it has since November 7th. Since then, China picked this confrontation, and it has been losing. And so I think that China is now looking for allies far and away. But clearly right now, China has been humbled by someone who will not be cowed by Beijing's bluster.
I think about the Philippines in that comment. I think about the new Prime Minister of Japan, despite the French seemingly to support Beijing. Your thoughts?
Well, it's exceedingly disappointing to see European leaders who live in a luxurious environment protected by an alliance and favorable economic terms with their neighbors sit there and concede things to Beijing that Beijing has never earned or had a right to. And we are blessed to have a change in leader in Japan. A lot of my friends refer to her as the Iron Lady of Asia, and she has Margaret Thatcher as kind of a mentor model to follow. And the fact that she's been reasonable but not willing to break in the face of Beijing's constant political warfare pressure has been a blessing to deterrence. But really, as you noted, the Philippines has also been constantly tested, and they have chosen to be a real resilient ally in that first island chain, doing the right things that President Trump's team has been asking on modernizing their capabilities, investing more in their defense, looking at sea and air defenses. These are all the right things. And so Beijing's political warfare to try to recast what the Communist Party was in World War II just isn't selling like it used to.
Yeah, well, and the Philippines deployed their Coast Guard flagship over the weekend to counteract China and their attempts there. So I think that's a good thing. But I want to pivot back to you for a second, back to Russia and Ukraine and kind of China's role in all this. We had Victoria Coates with on the last hour, and she made the point that everything that you're seeing between Russia and Ukraine points back to China, and that Vladimir Putin is looking to make sure that he follows in the will and pleases Xi Jinping. There's an economic story there. Who is buying Russian oil? Well, it's China. So if Vladimir Putin wants to keep his war machine going, he needs the Chinese.
He does, and Victoria is exactly right on this, and it's been one of the most frustrating parts of this entire exercise, where a lot of the world looks at the European theater and they have demonized Vladimir Putin and Russia relentlessly through the process, and that's been well deserved, but they have had kind of kid gloves when it comes to the leader of China. It sort of gets at the French leader's willingness to warm up with an aggressor in Beijing for economic interests while ignoring that same leader's role in sustaining the Russian war machine. You just can't solve the conflict in Europe by having kid gloves with the leader of China. And so that is where the world has had a slower wake-up call, and more of the U.S. team is having, I think, a better set of allies to work and improve with in East Asia.
Yeah, because, I mean, if you look at somebody like Steve Witkoff or Jared Kushner, I mean, they've had conversations. This isn't just about Eastern Europe. This is about the Middle East. And then, of course, the trade talks with China, which have still been ongoing. But at the same time, just real quick before you go, I do want to get your overall sense. How likely do you think it is that we're going to come away with a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine today? Like, is there a percentage you can give me here?
Yeah. I would give it sort of a 30% chance that we're going to have a deal that actually is the one that achieves peace. I think that's a very big percentage given the challenge. I think the disposition of territory is something that gets dealt with later in a process, but getting a ceasefire that holds and trying to get some kind of coalition that gives confidence in holding that peace, that's where the framework, I think, has real chance of success. And maybe in the next week or two, we get something along those lines that shows the goalposts having moved downfield.
Steve Yates, you're always a great voice on global affairs. Thank you for being here, Steve.
Thank you.